Okay, great. Well, my name is Cannon Smith. This is about customer-facing documentation. So if you were planning on learning more about scaling or something, you're in the wrong room. You need to go somewhere else. I'd like to just, oh yeah, that's me right there. Just ask a quick question. I'm curious, how many of you have customer-facing documentation already? A few, not too many. Okay, that's where I was not very long ago. And another, just a quick question here. How many of you have it in PDF form? Of those that you did have it? Just 2 or 3. Videos, anyone use videos? 1. Website? Yeah. And Microsoft compiled help? That's an old one, but maybe, no, none of those. Just regular HTML, like within 40 itself? No. And any others that I don't know about? Yeah, okay. That's helpful for me to know kind of where things are at. So one of the things I enjoy doing is reading blogs from other developers, 4D or otherwise, and learn kind of the thinking process behind different features they added, or maybe bug fixes, how they went around figuring out how a bug was there, that type of thing. And so I thought I would just start off by telling you our story and how we got to where we used to be to where we are with this. Hopefully you might be interested or maybe learn something along the way. So about 10 years ago, I partnered with 2 other people, and we created a company that sold software to feedlots, cattle feedlots. I'm from I have an agricultural background, and so that was interesting to me. One of my partners was actually a feedlot operator, so that was perfect. He could do all the beta testing. He could help us figure out what features we wanted and that type of thing. The other partner was a salesman, a feed salesman, so he knew lots of clients, and this was going to be great because he could do sort of the sales end of things. And then I was the nerd, the developer. And so I got to work, and after a little while, we had some kind of unique features. It's a bit of a niche market, as you could imagine. There's not a lot of feedlots around, but we were fairly successful, and we began to have some customers, and that was great. When we started, we offered customer support for free, basically. We knew these people personally. They were our neighbors, and they'd call up and ask questions. And we tried really hard to make our software intuitive, as I'm sure everybody does. And we found that most of the time, people really could do a lot of it without asking much in the way of questions. Occasionally, they'd have a question, and we'd give them the answer, and then that was it. They went on from there. So it was pretty easy, and we felt we could get away with not charging for customer support. It was something different from what our competition did, and it's helped set us apart for a little while. Well, things continued to go well. We accumulated more customers, and after a while, it got to be, just because we had enough customers, even though they didn't have very many questions each, it was still getting to be too much. And you probably experienced that yourself. After a while, it was mostly just myself doing the customer support, and then one partner who was a salesman. And of course, he had his own full-time job, and I was trying to program, and all these pesky customers kept getting in the way, and we were thinking about getting rid of the customers so I could just work, right? But that didn't seem to be a good solution. And so eventually, the one partner who owned a feedlot, he had an employee there that knew about Fusion, that's the name of our software, knew about Fusion from day one, had gotten quite good at it, and expressed some interest in doing some of the tech support. And so we began to feed some of the questions to him. And that was great because that took a lot of the load off of myself and my other partner. And it was helping him to learn as well. And it got to the point where we decided to hire him as a part-time employee, and eventually he actually became full-time tech support. The problem with that was that he expected to be paid. It's kind of an odd thing, but we were doing this, essentially for free. We were just doing our thing, and the support would come in, but he wanted to be paid by the hour. And so we began to pay him for doing the support. Also, at the same time, we began to have more customers, and they began to be further away. Most of our customers at the time were probably within a maybe a 60-mile radius or so. So we could even drive right to their place if we had to fix something. But we were starting to get them in other countries and even other continents. And the idea of flying around to fix things or to even do installations for free just was not very appealing. And so things were beginning to come to a head with all of these different factors. And we realized that we couldn't keep charging or not charging for customer support. So we did have one problem, though, and that was that we really didn't have much in the way of documentation. And we just didn't feel good about charging for support if they didn't have an alternative on their own. You know, it's kind of like with 4D. If we want to phone up and ask them all these questions we have from tech support, they'll give us how many ever case it is in whatever plan you have per year. And if you want to do that, you can, or if you want to really spend your time in the documentation and figure out yourself, you can try that as well. And but our customers didn't have that option. So we knew that step had to be finished first, and then once that finished, we could figure out how to charge and go from there. So that fell on me. Now, it wasn't like we didn't have any experience at all with documentation. We had sort of tried some things in the past. I actually had another product from even years before where I had tried to create PDF documentation with that using InDesign, Adobe InDesign. Probably some of you are familiar with that. And on the pro side, it looked nice. You know, it was great. We could deliver it, and that was great for the first time around. But then when it came to reorganizing, you know, if I reorganize some features, then I got to reorganize all the chapters or change things, and I just didn't like doing that. It seemed mundane and difficult, and so I didn't like the idea of PDF. Plus, you know, we were probably talking several hundred pages, if not, you know, even 1,000 pages, and that gets pretty tough with PDF. We tried doing short videos. I would record myself speaking into a video and do like a 3 to 5 minute video. That was terrible. I applaud you, Dave, if you're doing videos, but I found them very boring to make. And I'm sure our customers were put to sleep when they were watching that. But they're not searchable. That's kind of tough. And you know, if you change anything in your interface, then you got to go back and you update your videos. Sometimes just one aspect changes, but you know, you really should update the videos, and that's a pain as well. So we knew we didn't want to go down that road any further. I had made, I think, 50 videos when we were exploring that. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. If we would have gone all the way with videos, it would have been hundreds of videos for the entire product, and just didn't want to do that. We explored a technology called DITA. It stands for, I forget what it was, Darwin something or the other. Where did I put that? Has anyone heard of that by chance? Darwin Information Exchange. Anyway, it's in the notes that you have on the USB key, but it's actually a pretty neat documentation technology. It has the idea of topics, and every topic can be either a concept, a task, or a reference. And then within every topic, you can tag everything that's in there. You know, like if it was a button, you'd actually tag the button as a button or a menu item or whatever. And underneath, the underlying technology is all XML, and then it can spit out into whatever you want, HTML, PDF, and stuff. And you can style it completely based on those tags. And I really like the idea of doing that. It sounded really good. We actually spent a little bit of money starting to go down that road. In the end, for us, it was going to be too expensive. You actually had to have a separate server, and a lot of our customers didn't have a constant internet connection, or very poor, because in the rural areas, internet connections are quite often terrible or non-existent. And so in the end, it just didn't work, but it is actually a neat technology if anyone's interested in exploring it more. Bluestream was a company we were working with quite a bit in the beginning until we decided not to go down that road. So, and then the fourth type of documentation we tried was no documentation. And that was actually quite nice from my perspective. It was really easy to maintain and easy to create, and it was a dream. But it did run to this other problem that I've been talking about. So I began a search for some documentation type software. I wanted to find something where I could write the documentation, keep everything in there. And so the first thing I did was decide what the requirements were. And so I've listed a few of these requirements here. First of all, it had to be easy to create and maintain. I already knew from previous experience that if it was difficult to maintain, I just wasn't going to do it. And so it had to be easy. And sometimes something might be easy to create, but really difficult to maintain later on. And it had to be both of those, or I knew it just wouldn't get done. It had to be as automated as possible. I knew that if I had to take a lot of time, for example, maybe you're done typing up the new documentation, but if it took a lot of work to integrate it into our system or to get it on a website or whatever, I had to go through certain steps every time, I just wasn't interested. It needed to be automated so I didn't have to worry about that. I wanted to be able to work with the best tools for the job. Whether if I'm cropping pictures, I want to work with something that's good at cropping pictures. If I'm working on the actual text, I want to work with something that's good at that. So in our product, like I said, a lot of the people that we work with don't have a good internet connection, and so we needed to have the documentation actually rolled into our product so that they could access it wherever they were. But we also wanted to have it accessible from our website for a couple of reasons. One, so that we could point people to it very quickly, and two, so that if they weren't even able to run our product for whatever reason, the problem was that our product wouldn't even launch or there was a crash or whatever, they still needed to access the documentation to see what to do in that situation. And so we had to have it in both places, and importantly, we wanted to make sure it was always up to date and in sync in both of those places, and again, with as little work as possible. We wanted to be able to do videos, of course, not that we want to do many of them, but we wanted the option at least to be able to do a video. But we didn't want it to be, we didn't want the big, large file sizes that come from videos to be stuffed into our product as well. So we needed to have those only available on the website, but still be able to look at them from with our product. We wanted, of course, to be able to include pictures and other resources. We wanted to be able to do markup for buttons and stuff. I really like the idea of being able to call out what is a button and have it just really easy to see as you're reading the documentation. You're talking about a menu item or whatever. We wanted to be able to have our help buttons right inside the windows inside of our documentation so that when you clicked on it, it would not only just take you to the general documentation, but the specific place in that documentation that would help them for that area of our application. We wanted to have the ability to do a lot of cross-referencing. So cross-referencing between subjects or topics or whatever you want to call them, and then like a topical guide type thing as well. And part of the reason we wanted to do that was because I'm lazy, and I knew that the more we could cross-reference, the less I'd have to write, because I can just sort of point to other places that I've written before. I wanted to be able to just send a customer an email or text link to some documentation. They call up on the phone, have a question. I can say, you know what, the answer is here, and then click on it and read it. We wanted it to be organized, had to be searchable, they had to print it. Lots of people will actually print certain pieces of our documentation and go stick it up out in the barn where the cattle are coming through or whatever, so employees can see it there. I wanted the ability to extend it to other mediums in the future, whether it was PDF or whatever else. And finally, I didn't want to, well, I'll save that last point for just a minute. So that sounds like there's a lot there, but I think that's pretty much all reasonable things, right? That's kind of thing that most of us, the kinds of things most of us would be looking for. And so I naively assumed that there would be a product, or probably many products out there, that would basically fill this function. Help documentation systems are something that are used the world over, and it must be something there. And so I searched, and I actually couldn't find anything unless it was crazy expensive or just didn't meet some of the criteria. And so I began to get a little itch. Maybe some of you experienced that itch. You think, well, I could probably write that myself. But I quickly shook my head and said, no, that would be absolutely ridiculous, because if you look at all of the requirements, by the time you created something that did all of that, you would have a product that you could then sell to other people to take care of their documentation. And we weren't interested in going down that road because obviously it would take forever and we had other issues. And so I pushed the itch away and I kept looking and it just wasn't coming. That's what the last bullet point is there. I didn't want this to turn into a full product. I didn't want to do this on my own. But we simply couldn't find it. And so I started doing some thinking, and this was, I'd be curious, how many of you feel like when you're creating a feature in your product that you really want to make sure that it's very extensible, that it's going to be able to, very future-proof. You don't want to come back in 2 years or even 6 months later and have to keep adding to it. You want to be done with that feature and know it's going to work forever. Is that fair for most of us? Yeah. I've run into that all the time. And that's what I wanted to do here. But I knew we couldn't. And so I thought, well, what would happen if I drew some lines in the sand? You know, can I draw some lines in the sand to say I'm not willing to go past a certain point? If it breaks 10 years down the road or even 2 years down the road, I'll deal with it then, but what can I do to keep it simple enough to make this possible? So this is what I ended up with as lines in the sand. First of all, I decided that topics were going to be the name of the game here. Every single thing that I define in the system would be a topic. In other words, there would never be a thing in the system that would only link to other topics. It's just a topic. So that was kind of a limitation, but I was willing to live with that. And every topic would be of a predefined type. I'll go over what I ended up deciding on in the end. I've got, I think it's 5 or maybe it's 6 different types of topics that you can have. And that's it. Everything has to fit into those topics. All topics are organized in 2 levels. Our software, the menu system, the organization of the functionality in it, is all organized basically at 2 levels deep. I'll show you that in a minute when I get to the demonstration. And so I thought we're going to keep it so all topics are always organized at 2 levels. That would simplify a lot of logic and code. For us, that would work. The folder and the file hierarchy for all the HTML files and stuff, I was going to make sure the naming, I knew if I followed a really strict naming convention, something that, the user might come in, they shouldn't, but in theory, they could come in and they could change something and it would break the system. I was okay with that. They shouldn't do that. And that made some things easier too. I decided I would not write any piece of code that I couldn't find another application that could do it for me better. So, I'll show you some examples. I use several different applications. I'll send some information out to it, do the editing in that application, and then pull it back into the system. And that would save me a lot of stuff there too. So I decided to go with HTML for all the base documentation. And finally, on the website, which I think I'm just going to show that to you right now. All right, let me figure this mirroring thing out here. So this is the home page of our website. If you click on the documentation, we've got a couple smaller products, but Fusion documentation is the main thing. This window here, or this page here, is what I consider our top level of all of the documentation for this product. And so one of the limitations is that there's only one page that is kind of the menu for all of those 2-level deeps of topics everywhere else. And so that was another limitation, but we were willing to work with that. So let me just show you around what we ended up with for a moment. Once we'd come up with those limitations, I realized this really wouldn't be that hard of a project for us to build. I think it took me about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks at the most to finish it, so it wasn't too bad. Not writing the actual documentation, that took a lot longer, but the system was about that long. And we ended up with about 250 topics. If I print it out as a big long PDF, it's about 500, Well, it's over that now, but it was about 500 pages when we started. And one of the things I didn't anticipate that it helped us with was that a lot of times a customer might call up, or even some of our internal guys might call up and ask me a question that they couldn't remember, and I didn't remember the answer either. But I could look in the documentation, and it would help me remember what the answer was, and then I could point them to that. And so a lot of stuff I used to have to go in and check my code and try and figure out, okay, what was I doing there? I can now see in the documentation. So that was very helpful. So let me show you around a moment. This taskbar over here, it's a little hard to see probably in the back. This shows a bit of our organization in our application. If they click on any of these, Fusion Admin, Fusion Core, Fusion Commodity, the menu at the top here changes, and then they can get into all their different functionality for there. So that's where we get the two levels. So in the website, you can see we have a Fusion Basics. It has a bunch of different topics in there. That's just sort of an extra one. But then from then on out, we have Fusion Admin, which links up to Fusion Admin over here. And then we would have Fusion Core, goes to Fusion Core, etc. And so if they're even a little bit familiar with our product, they're used to going to these different modules or areas of the application, then they can pretty much know where to find a help topic pretty quickly, even without searching for it. So that was very helpful there. I'll leave the website here for a minute. And boy, that's really small. So if I click on the documentation window, let me try and zoom in here a little bit. This is what it looks like when they're inside the application itself. I've got a list of our topics on the left-hand side. Let me just show you a few of them. Let's see if we chose menu navigation. So there's just a simple topic that shows them how to navigate our system. It's got a picture. You can see there's some coloring of some of the words and stuff, and you know, like you can see right here, you can also right-click. Anytime there's an action they perform, that would come up as one color. Buttons or other things are different colors as well. So the tagging is there. You can have tips and warnings and all sorts of those kinds of things in there as well. Let me show you. Here's a place where you could start off our core concepts. It's actually a pretty long topic. So if you wanted to go to animals and linking, you click on that. It takes you right to that part. So you can actually have linking within topics as well. So that works out nicely. You can have video. Let me see if I can find one. Here's a video. Now the video itself is actually coming from our website and not from within the application, even though everything else is coming from the application. So it's smart enough to know how to link over through there. Except I'm not going to actually play it for you because that'd be extra boring. A couple of more things I want to show you. We wanted to have it printable, like I said before, and searchable. I'll start with the searching. We've got a search bar up here, just a typical one like most of you would have. And if I type in something like, I don't know, out cohort, it comes out, there's actually quite a few in there. But it actually goes through and looks at every topic and sees if the word out cohort's in it, and it shows you a list of those topics. This is another place where I took a shortcut. When I first started the feature, I thought I'd probably be doing some kind of indexing. You know, I'd have it index all of my topics. And then when I was finished, have the index, I'd look up the index and know which topic it was and load that topic or something like that. But to start with, I just did a brute force looking through every file. So I'd have my list of 250 topics. I'd just go through a for loop, load each one in memory, do a find in, is it find in string or whatever the command is, look through the document, and then load the next document. And I found that I can go through 250 documents in like half a second or something. So I took a shortcut. I just left it like that. And that was one reason why I was able to do this even faster than I first thought. So another shortcut I took is printing or searching within the web page. So this particular one I showed you is actually quite a long topic. And if you want to search within it, I don't actually offer that in here. But if they click this little world button up here, what it does is it loads it in the web browser. And then they can use their native web browser to print or to find within that page. So again, a little shortcut, but that helped make things faster. Okay, so let me just show you one more thing, and then I'll go to the sample database. So if you have a window open, let me just choose some random window here. This is an in-cohort window. There's always a help button. I have a help button in every single window that you can open in Fusion. And if they ever click that, it either opens up the documentation window, or if there's one already open, but it automatically takes them to that topic. And for us, that was very important. We wanted to be able to get them right to where they needed to be, and then they could read that. So, okay. So after we finish that, yes?
What's the markup on your text there to format that way?
It's CSS. So I'll show you an example in a couple of minutes of what the HTML looks like. But basically, it's just a CSS, I don't know what you call them, tags. I'm not actually very good with HTML and CSS, but I was able to cobble enough together to do this.
So when you search, is it skipping the HTML tag?
Actually, it's not. Another shortcut I took, I thought that was going to be a real big problem because they'd come back with some really wacky results. But in practice, it works. You know, I guess they're not searching for weird tags very often, and so it doesn't matter. So, yeah. So what I was going to say, so we finished this. We're able to deploy. Customers have been happy with it. Of course, they don't all read the documentation, but we can now charge them. So we were happy with that. That really made a big difference for us. And we had one particular customer who was really abusing our system. They would call us almost every day, and we were losing money on them, because by the time we paid this tech support guy to help them and what they were paying us, we were coming out negative. And it was interesting, within a couple of weeks, the person that was calling all the time quit calling, and they actually ended up replacing that person because she wasn't willing to learn the stuff. She wanted someone to hold her hand all the time. So that was kind of interesting for us too. But it worked. It was a great experiment. So what I've tried to do is extract the code that I have and put it into a sample database. I don't know that it's going to be really useful particularly for anybody, because it was a bit hard to extract because it's very closely tied with our application. But if it can be a starting point for somebody who's interested in going down that road, or you can get some ideas from it, that would be great. So I want to go through some of the parts. I'm now in the sample database that you have on your USB key. And this is the documentation creator window. This is where I do all the creation. And so I'll just show you a few examples here. The left-hand side is just a list of all the topics. Again, 2 levels deep. Start with the first one here. Every topic has certain attributes, has a development code or dev code there, and that needs to be unique. That's kind of important, because anytime there's cross-referencing going on or anything else, it's all based on the dev code. That's just something you make up. Then you've got the section and the subsection, and you can type whatever you want in there, and it automatically puts it in those sections. And of course, you can give it a title. That's what the user would see. And each one is a type. So if I click the plus button down here, you can have a general topic, a normal window topic, so something related to a window, a video, by the way, I call it a normal, I probably could have left it at window. In our system, we have normal windows and list windows. I wasn't able to extract the code for list windows because it wouldn't have made sense for you, but that's why it's normal window. If you want to make a video, you can have external links, and then you can also have aliases to other topics. Again, that was because I was lazy. Sometimes we have the same functionality in our application. You can get to it from 2 different places in the menu system, and so I want to just be able to have an alias so it still goes to the same help topic. Each type has different attributes. So a video, for example, there's some extra stuff in here to help you make a video a little bit easier. And an alias is just the link, and then an external link, you actually type in a link there as well. So you can create your topics. Now, if you, let's see, which one do I want to show? If I were to just double click one of these topics, it automatically opens it in an HTML editor. I use Coda. Is anyone familiar with Coda from Panic? Yeah? They're actually here, right here in Portland, I found out. That's kind of cool. I found out that in their office building, they have a sign on the outside of the office. And if you go to a certain URL that they give you, you get a chance to change the color, and you can see the sign color change. I got to go try that later before the summit's over. So. Anyway, this is an example. I could just type in something like, let's say, I wanted to say, I need a good example. Please click the enter button. If I were to just select enter, I have a bunch of shortcuts over here on the left, on the right-hand side, just built in. And if that was going to be a UI control, then I just double click it, and you can see that's where it adds your class. This is the class UI control, and that's what gives you your coloring. And I've got several ones that I've built in, UI control, a menu cascade, window title, keyboard shortcut, and there's some other stuff there too, just to make it a lot faster to type the documentation. I find that I don't really worry anymore about, I used to almost word my documentation so I didn't have to do that sort of thing, and now it doesn't even matter because I can just double click these things and go on really fast. So when I'm done with Coda, all I have to do is save that file, and I'm done. It's in the new documentation, ready to be built. So I'll go through a few things on the creator, on the documentation creator, and then I'll show you some stuff that's going on underneath the scenes as well. Assuming I have enough time. Where are we at? Okay. So for each of these topics, there's several things you can do with them. If I were to right-click on a topic here, there's actually quite a few options. So the first option up here is I can get a 4D help button code. So if I've just clicked on the general topic, if I choose that option, it's pasted something in the clipboard that I can paste into a method that will automatically call that particular topic from anywhere in the application. It's actually just a quick method call. In the demo, there's a demo window with a couple of buttons on it. And so if I click this button, then it just automatically opened the normal window. So what's behind that? Let's click it again. And you can see this bit of code right here. It's just help show, and then the name of that, the development code, and that's how it knows what to do. In my own system, you can actually have multiple windows open, or if there's a window already open, it uses some inter-process messaging that will change the topic on the fly. That was too much code to port over, so if you want that, you'll have to add that yourself, but it will just open the window. But that's all it is, just a simple help show. But it copies that in automatically, so I don't have to remember when I haven't done documentation for 6 months and I go back to write something, I just right-click, paste, and I'm done. I can get a cross-link to that general topics that I can then paste in somewhere else in Coda, for example, when I'm typing, and it'll be there. Actually, I should probably show you that example I'll do, I can get several different kinds of cross links. So there's one with a title or one with just a path. I almost always use the one with the title. And I can also get it to some other place too. So if I just chose a cross link to this video topic, and then if I go back in Coda on this particular topic, if I just paste in, you can see that it pastes in a special kind of link. And this link has some special meaning in it that during the building of the documentation, it knows how to change that into a real link depending on the context. I'll go over that a little bit more in just a minute as well. So a couple other things. I could get a link to an asset. So you can have pictures and CSS files and all these other things all in an assets folder, and those are treated a little bit differently. So you can still link to a picture of a button that's really common or something like that. And this is how you can get a link to that. I can also get an HTML snippet. I actually prefer to do the double click thing in Coda that I showed you a minute ago rather than getting a snippet here. But you could do that as well. It gives you the capability to move files into the assets or to, if you've taken a screenshot that came in as into your clipboard, you can use this button or this option here. It'll take it out of the clipboard, save it to a file that you name in a location you want automatically, and then you've got a link to it. You could edit different ones or delete them. There's a whole template system, which I'll also show you in a minute, and just some other obvious stuff here. A few of the applications I use a lot: Sketch, ScreenFlow for video. You can switch those. And another place I took a shortcut, when I'm using the hierarchical mode in this list box, I wasn't able to get it to drag and drop to reorder things very well. Probably something I was doing wrong. I didn't take the time to figure it out. Instead, what I did is I just added the ability to switch to a normal selection view, and then I can drag and drop however I want, and then switch back to hierarchical view. So a little shortcut to save me some time. I'm the only one that uses it, so I wasn't worried about making it perfect for a customer. Last thing I'll show you in the creation window is the building functionality. So there's some website paths that are kind of important. Because we're building both for the application itself, but also to go on the website, it has to know about both places. And so the master site folder up here at the top, that's the place on my local hard drive where I'm keeping the master files for my website. And it needs to know where that is so it can place some files there as well. It wants to know the actual URL for our site. It needs to know a little bit about the subpath, because you can have your website, like I showed you on ours, we have our main website. The documentation for this application is actually buried in a ways, and it needs to know the difference in that path so it can build paths. And then the master help file is that main page. I can just show you again. That's this page right here that links to all of the other ones. It needs to know where that is so it can also build that as well. And then when I build, after all that work, all I have to do is click, I can do a pre-flight check. So I can do that. It says no issues were found. It basically goes through and makes sure all the linking is going to work correctly, all the files are in the right place, nothing's missing, etc. And when I'm ready to build, I just simply click Build All, and it goes through, and it'll tell me if there's any errors, but there were no errors. This is a very simple one, just a few topics, and it's now built. And if I was to go look in the viewer, those changes we made were there. It's not uploaded to the website yet. If we were to go back to, let's see, where did Coda get to? In Coda, and I think other HTML applications would be similar, it's letting me know over here, it's detected that I have these 4 topics, these 4 files have changed because it was rebuilt. And so when I'm actually ready to deploy to customers, I can just click Publish All, and up it would all go, and then they're done as well. But I can control the timing of when that happens. So I want to show you a little bit about what happens underneath the scenes. Let me go back to my notes for a moment. The folder layout's kind of important to keep in mind. So there's two parts going on here. On the left-hand side, this is showing how the folder layout in the resources folder, so the 4D resources folder, this is where everything is. There's a file called web help info. It's a JSON file, so an object. And that stores, a list of all the topics, where they are, what their attributes are, all of those kinds of things. The web help folder is where the actual, when I just did that build, it actually changed all the stuff in that folder. And when I deploy 4D to the customer, that's the folder that needs to go with them so they have the local help available. Then the web help dev folder, that's just where the main content goes, the help object main content. This folder has a list of all the topics, the actual HTML files for that, or at least the portion of the file that I need. It has all the templates. There's a whole bunch of templates used in the building process and stuff, which can be customized however you want it to look, and any other resources. I actually stripped that folder out during the build process, so none of that goes to customers. And then for the website part of it, you're going to have your site, whatever that is, and then you're probably going to have some kind of index.html file, and you could have all kinds of other things. But somewhere in your site, you're going to have a file. It doesn't matter what it's named. Right here, I've named it docs parent, but that's where your parent, where kind of your menu for all the rest of the help is. That's that file which gets changed during the build. And then you're going to have some other folder. Here, I've named it docs. It can be named whatever you want. And inside that is also going to be everything that gets built, just like in the resources site. So when you do a build, it's actually building your local stuff and your website stuff all simultaneously and making sure everything's in sync. What's inside that folder? There's always an assets folder. This assets folder is a little bit unique in the build process. The building never actually changes something in there. You can make changes to it however you want. If there's an asset that's in your local folder that isn't in the main website folder, usually you put stuff there first, it will copy it across so you have it, but it'll never delete anything. So you can keep stuff where you want, but that's kind of your folder. Everything else basically gets deleted and rebuilt from scratch. And it's, again, following that 2 level. There'll be, if the name of your section was basics section, it's going to change it to a folder named basics section. It changes case and adds hyphens for spaces and stuff, but it follows the same thing. Then your subsection, and then a list of your folders in there. So that's kind of the basic structure. There's more information inside the documentation you have if you want more on that. I want to talk about links for a moment here. I showed you when I pasted a link to another topic in, it had this sort of funny looking link structure. And the reason for that is the links have to be used in different ways. So there's 3 kinds of links. There's this first one, which I call the link asset path. It's just a link to one of those assets, whether it's a picture, or video, or whatever. And then I'll have the link in this form. If that's going to go in your application, in the resources file during a build, then it's going to change it to that first line there. Basically it uses the double dot notation to know to come up a couple of folders, access the assets folder, and then drill down into where it knows the asset is. If it doesn't know, if it's not actually in your app's asset folder, like a video might not be, a video might only be in the main site, it'll actually create a full HTTP path to that, so that even from your local file, it's going to be calling your web server or wherever you have it to pull that down. And if it's going into your website files, then it just does a link that way. So you can see in the different situations, it has to do a little bit differently. One thing I want to point out that's probably not quite so obvious is this one here. If you're doing a cross-link from one topic to another, if it's going to the website, you're going to get a pretty normal looking path. But if it's going to be sitting in your resources folder for your application, it's going to look like this. And the reason for that is because I want to be able to handle the cross-referencing of topics in that documentation viewer window myself. And so I'm basically capturing any links. And if I find a link that looks like that, I'll look up the dev code and manually point them to the next topic in the list. So rather than having it be a normal link. So, all right. I actually didn't cover some of the stuff I wanted to. I was going to show you some more files, but I think I'm almost out of time. So I'm going to just see if there's any questions, first of all. Any questions? Yeah.
So as far as your workflow, like if you have a feature request or a bug fix and you change the title of some link in your app, how do you have developers, how do you make sure that they change that?
Good question. So first part of that, it's easy for me because I'm really the only developer on our team, so I just have to do it. At first, my workflow was, one of the things I kind of glossed over was there was a notes area in the documentation creator window, so I keep track of things I wanted to do. And so I would add features or make bug fixes, and I would just make notes for myself, knowing that before I released, I needed to go back and update the documentation. And that was terrible because it might go 2 or 3 months, and then all of a sudden, all this documentation I got to do, and I didn't like doing that. So now what I do is anytime I make a change, like I might work on a feature for, say, a week, when I've pretty much done that feature, I'll go write that help topic right away. Like whether it's editing a help topic or creating a new one, or adding some crosslinks, because it's still fresh in my mind. And I find that much easier to do. So by the time you're ready to deploy, documentation's all there.
So you just have discipline in your head.
Just have to have the discipline, yeah. So one way to be able to make workflow. But it's kept in small enough chunks that it's okay. I can usually, an hour, maybe, or a couple hours at the most, and I don't have to worry about it again for a while. So.
You know you're saving yourself work because you're not going to get a phone call about it.
Exactly. That's very helpful. And again, another reason that's nice for me to do it so close to when I've just finished that new feature or that change is sometimes it makes sense to document things in such a way that it's helpful for me later on. Like I would obviously document some real low-level stuff that customers would be confused by. But there might be certain things I know if I add the documentation, it's going to be a trigger to me, so I don't have to look at my code for it. And I won't remember that later down the road, those little things. Any other questions? All right. Well, you've been a good crowd. Thank you very much.